Hi everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Thrive Spectrum. I'm your host, Layan, and I am so excited you're here with me. This podcast is a space where we talk about everything that makes us human: our bodies, our minds, our work, and the ways we grow. From mental health to physical wellness, from personal development to career evolution, Thrive Spectrum is here to explore it all. Each week, I'll take you on a journey to unpack a topic that matters, sometimes backed by science, sometimes through real stories, always with the goal of helping you thrive on your terms. Now, let's get into our very first episode. Today, we're talking about something that's often misunderstood and misjudged: ADHD. Most people think of ADHD as a childhood disorder, something about being hyper, distracted, or not paying attention. But what if I told you that ADHD is so much more, and that it might actually be a superpower, hiding in plain sight? This episode is inspired by the brilliant book ADHD 2.0 by Dr. Edward Hallowell and Dr. John Ratey, two psychiatrists who don't just treat ADHD, but live with it. They describe ADHD not as a deficit, but as a different way of being: a brain that's more like a Ferrari engine, with bicycle brakes. In the next few minutes, we're going to explore what ADHD really is, why it's often misdiagnosed or dismissed, and how it can shape not just challenges but also creativity, energy, intuition, and resilience. If you've ever struggled with distraction, restlessness, or felt like your brain just works differently, this episode is for you. Let's dive in.
In this incredibly fast-paced world with constant pings from our phones, endless to-do lists, and the pressure to multitask everything, do you ever just feel like your brain is running way too fast?
Oh, definitely.
Like you're trying to keep up, but things keep slipping through the cracks. Maybe you're a little scattered, forgetful, or just struggle to stay focused.
Mm-hmm.
It almost feels like, dare I say, you're experiencing a little ADHD.
That feeling you're describing, that sense of being overwhelmed by the pace and demands of modern life, it's incredibly common. The sources we're diving into use the term modern erraticism to capture how pervasive that feeling has become.
It really resonates, and that's precisely why this deep dive is so important. We've been exploring source material drawn from a truly insightful book that looks at understanding and managing what's traditionally been called ADHD, but through a new lens.
Yeah, it really digs into the latest science and offers practical, actionable strategies.
And what's refreshing about these sources is their fundamentally positive framing. They really move away from seeing ADHD solely as a list of deficits or something rare and problematic.
Exactly. They immediately grab you with this powerful analogy, suggesting we think of it not as a flaw, but potentially as a profound strength, albeit one that presents unique challenges.
Right, that image they use, having a Ferrari engine, capable of incredible speed and power, but frustratingly equipped with bicycle-strength brakes.
That's the core of it. The difficulty isn't the absence of power. The Ferrari engine is often running at full throttle, but the mismatch between that immense drive, energy, and talent, and the ability to effectively regulate, control, or, stop that energy.
Yeah, those are the bicycle brakes, representing executive functions, self-regulation skills, that sort of thing.
Exactly. So our mission in this deep dive is to really unpack that analogy. What does it mean to have that kind of powerful, fast-moving brain?
And why does this specific challenge with the brakes seem to happen based on the science in our sources?
And most importantly, how can you use these insights to strengthen those bicycle brakes, harness that incredible Ferrari power, and live a better, more fulfilled life, potentially even thriving with these unique traits?
Okay, let's jump in. Where do we start?
Well, the source material begins by challenging a major misconception many people hold about ADHD, that it's a small, rare problem, like a minor bump in the road or a molehill.
But it's anything but. Right, it's widespread, significant part of the human experience for many. The sources cite statistics suggesting it occurs in at least 5% of the population.
And the authors make a compelling case that this number is likely much higher in reality. Why? Partly because there's a real shortage of professionals properly trained to diagnose ADHD accurately, especially in adults.
So many people just fly under the radar.
Yeah, and crucially, there are countless individuals who are highly talented, intelligent, perhaps even successful in certain aspects of life, but are constantly battling against these traits internally. They're managing, maybe doing well enough, but the underlying struggle isn't recognized or diagnosed.
That makes sense. Plus, you add in what we started with, the relentless, stimulating, rapid-fire nature of modern life. Images, sounds, alerts, demands, constant connectivity.
Right. It's an environment that can make anyone feel frazzled and scattered.
It's almost as if the world is catching up to the VAST brain's experience, making everyone feel that modern erraticism.
Exactly. So understanding these dynamics isn't just for those with a formal diagnosis. The strategies for improving focus and regulation can be incredibly valuable for navigating today's world, period.
Which brings us right back to that core analogy. The Ferrari engine with bicycle-strength brakes. Help us understand this mismatch more deeply. If the engine is the power and talent and the brakes are the regulation, what does that feel like in practice for someone with this kind of brain?
Okay, think of it this way. You have this incredible capacity for speed, for generating ideas, for intense energy when something captures your interest. That's the Ferrari humming. But when it comes time to slow down, shift focus, stop a task you're engrossed in, or initiate something you find boring, that's where the brakes feel inadequate. The intent might be there, but the mechanism for controlling the direction or speed of the mental engine feels weak or unreliable.
So the goal isn't to get rid of the Ferrari engine, because that's where the potential lies. It's about upgrading the braking system so you can actually control that power effectively.
Exactly. The source emphasizes that the path forward is about strengthening those executive functions, those self-regulation skills, beefing up the bicycle brakes so they can actually handle the Ferrari's capability. It's about control, not constraint.
Okay. Now, here's where the sources dive into what I found particularly fascinating, the often contradictory, paradoxical nature of traits seen in the VAST brain. It's not a simple list of problems.
No, it's full of surprising contrasts. For example, you often hear about a general lack of focus, a tendency to be easily distracted.
Right, that's the stereotype. But counter to that is the incredible ability to superfocus, to enter a state of hyper-focus on topics or tasks that are intensely interesting or stimulating. Hours can just disappear.
Yeah, exactly. Or there might be a perceived lack of direction or structure in certain parts of their lives.
But then, in areas that engage them, they can exhibit remarkable, highly driven entrepreneurialism or pursue passions with single-minded intensity. It's quite the contrast.
It really is. And you observe significant procrastination, leaving things undone until the very last minute.
But then, almost magically, they possess this uncanny knack for getting a week's worth of work done in just 2 hours when the pressure is truly on. We've all known people like that, right?
Absolutely. And there can be moments of seemingly impulsive, sometimes ill-judged decision-making.
Followed by bursts of incredibly inventive, out-of-the-box problem-solving. Like, where did that come from?
And while interpersonal interactions can sometimes be characterized by interpersonal cluelessness or difficulty with social cues,
they can also demonstrate moments of uncanny intuition and empathy, seeming to deeply understand others on a level others miss. It's this complex, often misunderstood set of tendencies that defines the VAST experience.
And these paradoxes are why the outward signs often go beyond the clinical criteria. They are the things that make someone say, wait a minute, this sounds like me, and maybe seek a formal evaluation.
One of the most common and often heartbreaking signs mentioned is unexplained underachievement. What does that look like?
Well, this is when someone clearly possesses innate talent, intelligence, creativity. The Ferrari engine is humming, but their actual performance in school, work, or life consistently falls short of that potential.
And there's no other obvious reason, like a physical illness or something.
Right, exactly. No other clear reason for it. The talent is undeniable, but something is preventing it from consistently translating into results.
Got it. What else?
Another prominent sign is a wandering mind. This isn't just daydreaming occasionally. It's the feedback received from teachers, supervisors, partners, the observation that the person struggles to stay on task consistently.
They might notice inconsistent performance. Some days are brilliant, productive, everything clicks. Other days are a struggle. Things are missed, errors happen, focus is just gone.
And this inconsistency, tragically, is often misinterpreted as a character flaw. The common, deeply unhelpful refrain is that they just need more discipline, need to try harder, or need to learn to pay attention.
Yeah. And this is where the source offers such a vital correction. It shifts from that moral judgment to a biological reality. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, the source clearly states that, based on current understanding, for the VS brain, in the absence of sufficient stimulation, they literally can't focus or regulate their attention effectively.
Wow. So it's not won't try.
It's not an issue of them won't try, but that the biological mechanism isn't functioning optimally to allow that consistent effort or focus unless the conditions are just right. Stimulation is key.
That reframing is incredibly powerful. It takes away the shame and points towards finding the right environment and strategies.
Exactly. It transforms the challenge from a moral failing into a functional difference that needs specific support and understanding.
Okay, let's talk more about that Ferrari engine set. The high degree of creativity and imagination the source highlights. They call it intellectual effervescence.
Yeah, it's this natural sparkle, a mind constantly bubbling with ideas, making connections others might miss. It's a tremendous asset.
But
The sources lament how years of constant criticism, redirection, lack of appreciation, and repeated experiences of failure or disappointment can suppress this effervescence, kind of dimming that natural light.
that's really sad, just through misunderstanding. Speaking of dynamics that are often misunderstood, let's explore the unique experience of time management and procrastination mentioned in the sources.
Oh, this is a big one. This is one of the hardest aspects for people without VAS traits to grasp, often reinforcing the idea of bad attitude or laziness. But the source explains that there's often a lack of an intuitive internal sense of the steady flow or arc of time. Seconds turning into minutes, minutes into hours, hours into days.
Instead, they seem to simplify time into two immediate states, now and not now. Is that right?
Exactly. So hearing we have to leave in 30 minutes doesn't register with the same urgency as it might for others. It gets processed as we don't have to leave now.
Right. Or that big project is due in 5 days translates to it's not due now.
And those 5 days can feel like an eternity, only to suddenly become now at the last moment. It's time for bed now. Might simply mean sometime in the future, I will go to bed.
I can see how this could understandably lead to real-world problems, conflict in relationships, missed deadlines, academic failures, even job loss.
Definitely. But this unique relationship with time is also linked to that positive paradox we discussed. When something does become now, when there's imminent pressure, a looming deadline, or sudden intense interest, the VS brain can kick into hyperfocus.
Right. That intensity, that pressure, provides the necessary stimulation to engage the Ferrari engine and get things done at incredible speed, often in those last couple of hours.
It's a double-edged sword rooted in this unusual experience of time.
Okay. So this dynamic also connects to a deeper level of understanding found in the sources, which looks at brain science. There have been revolutionary advances in the last 30 years, right?
Huge advances. And a key takeaway is that our brains are far more adaptable than we once thought. It's not a fixed entity determined solely by genetics or early childhood.
That's incredibly hopeful. It means we can change, we can learn new ways of operating, and this is possible at any age.
Absolutely not fixed.
Right.
The sources emphasize that what you do day to day, the relationships you have, your environment, lifestyle choices, they are constantly, subtly rewiring your brain. You can change who you are.
So how does the science explain those internal tensions and paradoxes we talked about?
Well, the sources describe two key brain networks that are particularly relevant. First, there's the task-positive network, or TPN.
Okay, TPN. That's the network that fires up when you're actively engaged in a task, focused, concentrating. It's what keeps you in the zone.
Right. When the TPN is fully engaged, the source calls it the angel mindset, because you're typically productive, efficient, and not getting stuck in overthinking or negative loops.
But you mentioned a downside, being too stuck in the TPN.
Yes, that's hyperfocus. It's an incredible ability to concentrate, but you can get so locked into one task that you lose track of everything else, time, other responsibilities, even basic needs. You struggle to switch off or transition to something else.
Okay, so that's the TPN, the focus network. What about the other one?
That's the default mode network, or DMN. This is the network that's active when your mind isn't focused on a specific task, when you're daydreaming, letting your thoughts wander, making free associations.
And this network has an angelic side too, right? It's not all bad.
Oh, absolutely. The DMN is crucial for creativity, for connecting disparate ideas, for thinking about the future and reflecting on the past. The sources playfully suggest significant inventions might have sprung from someone letting their mind wander in the angelic DMN.
Like the wheel, maybe?
Could be. Both TPN and DMN are essential for a healthy, functioning brain. They are the yin and yang.
So what's the challenge for the ADHD VIS brain in relation to these networks, the connection between them?
The sources introduce the concept of a glitchy switch. The difficulty lies in smoothly toggling between the TPN focused work and the DMN mind-wandering creative connections.
Okay. Neurotypical brains generally have an efficient switch, allowing them to move back and forth as needed.
Pretty much, yeah. But
Okay.
for the vast brain, that transition can be clunky, unreliable, or they can get stuck.
Stuck in either one.
Precisely. And while getting stuck in the TPN leads to hyperfocus, getting stuck in the DMN could be particularly problematic for the vast brain, leading to what the sources vividly describe as the DMN demon.
The DMN demon. Okay, tell us more about this. If the DMN can be angelic for creativity, what turns it demonic?
Well, the sources suggest that for individuals with VST, the DMN is more prone to becoming a source of distress. Why? Because over a lifetime of struggling with inconsistent performance, receiving criticism, experiencing disappointments, and dealing with shame and embarrassment related to their traits, they've often stored a wealth of negative experiences in their memory.
Oof. So when their mind is left to wander without a specific task, when the DMN is active, it tends to fall into these negative ruts.
Exactly. It has plenty of evidence from past struggles to support a narrative that life sucks or that they are inherently flawed.
And this is where the case of Hank from the source material comes in.
Yes, it's a compelling example. Hank's described as having immense natural talent, particularly as a salesman, but he's inwardly tortured by mental miseries.
He spends significant time caught in rumination. The DMN just looping through painful, jagged thoughts, images, ideas, and feelings. He sees potential danger and problems everywhere, his inner monologue reinforcing negatives.
And it's not productive reflection. It's a painful, pointless cycle that yields no solutions, only more pain. Despite his talent, Hank is underachieving because he just can't get his act together, meaning he can't regulate his internal state or direct his attention consistently.
He feels more exasperated than anyone, trapped in incessant self-blame. And the source mentions traditional approaches like antidepressants or therapy often didn't help him escape this cycle.
Right, which reinforced his feeling that he was different, maybe even having a devil of a dark side. This is the DMN demon fully unleashed.
Wow. So when that glitchy switch means you're prone to getting stuck there, the mind feeds on itself, becoming a disease of the imagination fixed on past hurts or future anxieties.
Yeah, it leads to abandoning tasks, making careless mistakes, and feeling despair for reasons that aren't always clear externally.
So staying in action, engaging the TPN, is one way to pull out of that DMN demon loop. Give the brain something else to focus on.
Exactly. It provides the necessary stimulation and focus to interrupt the negative rumination.
Yeah.
And the intense energy of the DMN, when it's ruling, can also drive something else the sources linked to VAST addiction.
That hunger at our core when the DMN is dominant.
Yes, that powerful seeking energy can be channeled into incredibly positive pursuits, creating art, building a business, deep relationships. But if those adaptive outlets don't provide sufficient reward or stimulation,
Then that same intense hunger can lead to destructive behaviors, seeking intense stimulation through substances or other addictive patterns.
that's the connection the source makes, which makes sense in light of the statistics cited. Addictions are 5 to 10 times more common in people with ADHD than in the general population. That intense inner drive needs to be channeled effectively.
Okay, switching gears a bit, but still on brain science, let's look at the cerebellum.
Yeah, this is fascinating stuff. This is the smaller brain structure at the base and back of the head, traditionally known mostly for physical balance and coordination.
Right, it makes up only about 10% of the brain's volume, but it holds roughly 75% of all the brain's neurons.
Isn't that wild? Its role in physical movement is well established, working with the inner ear, the vestibular system, to help you walk upright, catch a ball, or touch your nose with your eyes closed. Dysmetria, or wrong length, is the term for misjudging distance in movement, often indicating a cerebellar issue.
But the revolutionary insight came in 1998 with Dr. Jeremy Schmann's concept of dysmetria of thought.
This was groundbreaking. Schmann proposed that the cerebellum isn't just a physical coordinator. It also helps coordinate our thoughts, emotions, and cognitive processes. Dysfunction here could lead to a loss of mental or emotional equilibrium, not just physical balance.
So, like, dysmetria in movement means misjudging distance. Dysmetria of thought might mean misjudging the intensity of an emotion, the time a task will take, or the appropriate response to a situation. Like, the calibration is off.
Exactly. Think of it like the brain's timing or calibration being off across different domains. This led to the concept of cerebellar cognitive affective syndrome, CCAS, where cerebellar damage results in problems with executive function, language, spatial skills, and emotional regulation.
And the symptoms share striking similarities with aspects of ADHD.
They really do. And he followed this in 2004 with the concept of the universal cerebellar transform, or UCT.
Okay, UCT, what's that?
He described the UCT as an oscillation dampener for the entire brain. Imagine your brain is constantly trying to keep things steady, your focus, your mood, the intensity of your thoughts, how quickly you react.
Like a stabilizer.
Kind of. The UCT is like an automatic system, working without conscious effort to smooth out fluctuations and maintain a stable baseline across thinking, feeling, and behavior. Like the stabilizer on a ship, constantly counteracting the waves.
So if the cerebellum isn't functioning optimally, that oscillation dampener isn't working effectively, leading to more variability, inconsistency, and difficulty regulating focus or emotion.
Leading to those bicycle brakes feeling weak. That's the connection. Schmann's work suggests that if the cerebellum is key to this universal dampening or stabilizing function, then strengthening it might be a way to strengthen those brakes, improving overall regulation.
Okay, this is really interesting. Which leads us to exploring practical ways to stimulate the cerebellum that the sources discuss. How do you actually strengthen it?
Well, there are programs like Robert Melillo's Brain Balance Achievement Centers. They use intensive balancing and coordination exercises, primarily for more severe cases, often with significant time and financial commitment, though they report success for selected children.
And the Zing program by Winfred Dorr, that focuses on specific movements too.
Yeah, rotational, lateral, vertical stimulation activities that mimic natural childhood play, but are structured to target the vestibulocerebellar system.
What kind of exercises are we talking about?
The sources list things like standing on one leg, first with eyes open, then closed, using wobble boards while doing maybe cognitive tasks, sitting on exercise balls with your feet raised, balancing while picking up cards off the floor, low planks, juggling, stuff like that.
So activities that really challenge balance and coordination.
Exactly. Designed to progressively challenge balance and coordination, strengthening that cerebellar dampener. And its reports impressive results in a large number of participants, apparently offers a money-back guarantee, though the scientific gold standard of a randomized controlled trial is still needed for definitive proof.
Right. And there was an unconventional approach mentioned too, Dr. Levinson.
Yeah, Dr. Harold Levinson. For decades, he's been prescribing motion sickness medications like metlivine, dramamine, Benadryl for ADHD and dyslexia. His theory is based on their impact on the inner ear and its connection to the cerebellum.
That is outside the box. What do the sources say about that?
They acknowledge his approach is outside the mainstream, but they admire his willingness to think differently and his reported results. They agreed that the vestibulocerebellar system's role is likely much more central than previously understood.
And this ties into a powerful case history shared by Dr. Hallowell, illustrating how these ideas can play out in the real world, the story of Samuel in Shanghai.
Right, Samuel was a bright boy, struggling immensely. He was seen as lazy and unresponsive, facing corporal punishment from both parents and school, who believed he just needed to be forced to pay attention. Really tough situation.
Yeah. So Dr. Hallowell began consulting remotely via email with Samuel's mother, Lily. What was the plan?
It was multi-pronged. First, build a foundation of trust with Lily. Then educate her using the understanding of the VASD brain from the source book. And crucially, frame Samuel's challenges using that strength-based race car brain with bicycle brakes analogy.
Shifting the focus from you're bad to your brakes need strengthening. That feels much more hopeful.
Exactly. Accurate, but empowering. And a key part of the plan was incorporating specific balance and coordination exercises daily. The cerebellar stuff.
Like the ones you just mentioned.
Yep. Lily was given a list. Stand on one leg, eyes open closed. Put on socks while balancing. Use a wobble board, eyes open closed. Sit on an exercise ball with feet up. Pick up cards while balancing. Do low planks and learn to juggle 30 minutes of these daily.
And what happened?
The results were swift and remarkable. Lily reported noticeable improvements within weeks. Samuel's schoolwork improved. He was less disruptive, more engaged. The news spread at his school like juicy gossip.
Wow. So the parents and teachers actually changed their approach.
Completely. They dropped the yelling and hitting because they understood the biological basis of his struggle and saw him actively working on his brakes. Samuel became happier and more successful.
That's incredible. What were the key success factors there?
The source lists them clearly. Connection Dr. Hallowell with Lily, and Lily strengthening connections within her family and with the school. Education, everyone understanding the brain model. A supportive environment the school's change was pivotal. And that strength-based model empowering Samuel rather than shaming him.
That race car analogy seems particularly impactful.
Hugely. It gave Samuel agency. He wasn't a bad boy.
Mm.
His brakes were failing him, and he could work on them to become a champion. This moved interventions away from shame.
Which the source calls the most disabling learning disability, shame.
Precisely. Removing shame clears the path for growth.
Okay, so beyond brain science and targeted exercises, the source highlights something arguably even more powerful for long-term well-being, the healing power of connection, or the other vitamin C.
Yeah, this section is really profound. It begins with a fascinating, almost accidental discovery by Dr. Vincent Felitti at his obesity clinic. He noticed patients who successfully lost significant weight would sometimes drop out of the program and regain the weight.
Why would they do that?
He learned that for some, their larger size had been a kind of physical buffer, making them feel safe from past trauma or abuse. Losing weight made them feel vulnerable again. It's quite striking.
Wow. And this surprising link between trauma, physical health, and behavior led to the landmark Adverse Childhood Experience, or ACEs study, right?
Exactly. It surveyed 17,000 adults, many from surprisingly privileged backgrounds, about their exposure to trauma, abuse, neglect, household dysfunction like substance abuse or mental illness during childhood.
And the findings were startling.
Really startling. 2/3 reported at least one ACE, 1 in 5 reported 3 or more, and 13% reported 4 or more. These experiences are much more common than people thought.
And the connection to ADHD is significant.
Yes, ACE scores are considerably higher in families where a parent or child has ADHD. The impulsivity and difficulty with self-regulation inherent in VAS traits can sometimes create stressful, volatile situations that make individuals more vulnerable to mistreatment or provocation, setting up this dangerous setup, as the source puts it.
That makes a difficult situation even harder.
Absolutely. The sources also echo Dr. Vivek Murthy's statement that loneliness is the #1 medical problem today.
Seriously, #1.
Yeah, with health consequences comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day and worse than obesity. It's linked to cardiovascular disease, dementia, depression, anxiety, and critically impaired cognitive function, including executive function and reduced creativity. This loneliness epidemic demands urgent attention.
So the message is stark. Difficult experiences in childhood can profoundly impact adult life. Bad stuff begets bad stuff.
It can. But the beautiful, powerful antidote presented is positive connection,
Right.
which at its heart is love. It's the other vitamin C possessing incredible healing power.
Tell us about the rabbit effect study. That sounds intriguing.
It's a perfect, almost unbelievable illustration. Rabbits were fed a high-fat diet to study heart disease, and most developed severe arterial plaque. Except for one group. That group had 60% less plaque, despite the same diet and conditions. The only difference, the technician who cared for that group gave them extra attention, petting them, talking to them, showing them affection.
Love literally changed their biology.
Incredible, isn't it? And the Harvard Grant study, the longest study of adult development ever conducted, reinforces this. Following participants for decades, the key lesson for a life well lived was the power of relationships.
But it added a crucial nuance, right?
Yes. For love's healing magic to work, the individual must be able to receive it, to metabolize it, as they put it. The good news is, even a difficult childhood can be overcome by learning to let love in as an adult.
And Dr. Hallowell's personal story, shared in the source, is powerful testimony to this.
Extremely powerful. Despite an ACE score of 8, putting him at extremely high risk for a host of negative outcomes, he credits positive connection, vitamin C, for saving him.
He talks about his grandmother, Tammy.
Yes, who could make anything magical, turning mundane moments into celebrations, lifting spirits with her love and imagination. A truly positive force.
And he recalls a specific moment with a teacher, Mrs. Eldridge.
Right, putting her arm around him in the library when he was struggling deeply with reading. That simple physical connection, that moment of non-judgmental support, he says, cured the real learning disabilities, which are fear and shame and believing that you can't do something.
Wow. He notes he still reads slowly, but that connection empowered him to go to Harvard and become a successful writer.
It really highlights the impact one person, one connection can have.
The sources acknowledge that for those hurt in the past, fear of being hurt again can be a major barrier to seeking connection.
It's a real barrier. But the message is one of courage and hope. Hearts heal, and the titanic power of connection rises up from the deep when you dare to reach out.
So cultivating positive connections is presented as the best way to heal from a difficult past and the best way to ensure a bright future for children. Kindness and love help people grow.
A connected life is truly the most enriching gift.
And the sources provide a whole list of concrete, actionable ideas for how you can increase connection in your own life or help your children do so. Lots of practical stuff.
Yeah, really practical. Some are foundational.
Yeah.
Having daily family meals, which research shows does wonders, even improving academic outcomes like SAT scores.
Wow. Making meals with others a priority too, right? Introduces new perspectives, makes it a social event.
Exactly. Getting a pet, particularly a dog, the source is biased towards dogs, provides a reliable source of unconditional love and a focus for affection, reliably delivering that other vitamin C.
Keeping up with at least 2 good friends regularly is highlighted as incredibly important, maybe even more beneficial than daily trips to the gym for overall well-being and longevity.
That's what the source suggests. Scheduling standing dates helps make this consistent. Planning agenda-free time with loved ones, like sleepovers with grandkids or simply dedicated hangout time, is deeply restorative.
And that idea of reserving 30 minutes weekly of uninterrupted child-led special time with the child, that sounds powerful.
It's singled out as particularly magical for strengthening the parent-child bond and fostering a sense of belonging, a technique pioneered by Dr. Peter Metz.
Joining a group with regular meetings, a book club, a volunteer group, a lecture series is linked in studies like the MacArthur study to longer life and increased well-being, alongside frequent visits from friends.
Clearing pent-up anger and resentment by practicing forgiveness is crucial for emotional connection. It's not about condoning harmful behavior, but about releasing the anger's hold on you, freeing up emotional energy for positive connection.
Taking a daily gratitude inventory, either written or mentally listing things you're thankful for, that shifts your perspective, makes you feel lighter, more optimistic.
Which improves interactions. Paying genuine compliments to others costs nothing but feels good for both the giver and receiver, spreading kindness and reinforcing positive connection.
Engaging in spiritual practice, whether individually or as part of a group, can provide a sense of connection to something larger than yourself. Finding the right community is key there.
Walking in nature, alone or with a friend or dog, is restorative and can deepen connection to the world around you and your companion.
And this one's powerful. Never worry alone. Choosing a trusted person to share worries with can transform anxiety into problem solving or diffuse it through shared laughter and support.
So important. Being mindful of news consumption is also mentioned. Minimize it if it makes you feel anxious or disconnected, but continue if it helps you feel informed and connected to the wider world.
Visiting quiet, reverent places like graveyards is suggested as surprisingly grounding and rejuvenating. Giving yourself credit for your efforts to improve. Taking a moment to acknowledge your progress that connects you with your positive intentions.
Connecting with your personal vision of greatness or regularly admiring a living person you respect can be inspiring. Learning about ancestors or talking to non-related older people about their lives, it's like reading a great novel, providing perspective.
Firefighters are mentioned as particularly good connectors, worth seeking out.
Interesting tip. And a critical point for navigating life and connection. Associate with dream makers. Avoid dream breakers. Cynics, described with Oscar Wilde's definition as knowing the price of everything but the value of nothing, can drain your hope and energy.
Good advice. And finally, always be on the lookout for people who can provide what you or your child needs, but maybe can't provide for themselves, and actively seek out charismatic mentors.
The sources state these are the most significant difference makers for kids with ADHD, VADHD, more impactful than grades, IQ, or even the school they attend. Mentorship is huge.
Wow. Okay, switching gears to another powerful practical tool the sources strongly endorse, one that directly impacts brain function, the power of exercise and movement.
Yes, this isn't just about physical health, though that's important too. For the VS brain, exercise is profoundly therapeutic. It directly increases the levels of dopamine and norepinephrine, the neurotransmitters that are often off-kilter in the ADHD brain.
So it's like exercise is directly stimulating the brain's brakes, increasing alertness, focus, and the ability to regulate, almost like a natural stimulant.
In a way, yeah. It helps smooth out those clunky connectomes, the less efficient connections, particularly in the DMN, making it easier to switch to the task-positive network and engage the frontal cortex, the brain's control center that governs attention.
The sources cite a 2018 Spanish study that showed just 20 to 30 minutes of moderately paced exercise had immediate effects.
Immediate. Increasing reaction speed and precision and improving planning and organization skills in 65% of participants after a single session. That's pretty amazing.
It really is. This is something teachers have observed for years. Kids, especially those with attention challenges, can't sit still and focus effectively if they don't move.
And the story of Allison Cameron at City Park Collegiate in Saskatoon is a powerful testament to this. This was a school of last resort for students with significant academic and behavioral challenges, many with high rates of diagnosed and undiagnosed ADHD.
So what did she do?
Allison integrated exercise right into our classroom. She set up treadmills and bikes. Students had the choice between exercising and doing traditional classwork. And she participated alongside them, making it a shared activity, not a punishment.
How did that work logistically?
The students spent 20 minutes exercising at a moderate heart rate and then transitioned to classwork. The total time spent learning increased because the time previously lost to managing disruptive behavior just plummeted.
And the results were transformative.
Absolutely. Students were better able to regulate their emotions, their attention systems were turned on, they could sit still, absorb information, and participate more effectively. They felt better about themselves, suspensions dropped to 0 in the second semester, and attendance increased dramatically.
And the academic gains were astounding. 4 grade levels in reading in just 4 months.
Astounding is the word. The students became advocates, understanding how movement helped their brains function. It really highlights the importance of protecting things like recess and integrating physical brain breaks throughout the day.
Recognizing that movement facilitates, not hinders, learning.
Exactly. And the concept of time in is also introduced as a proactive strategy derived from this understanding.
Instead of a traditional time out.
Right. Instead of just sitting still, which can be torture for a VAST brain struggling to regulate, a time in involves engaging in physical activity, jumping on a mini trampoline, using a stationary bike, walking stairs, even running an errand specifically to restore emotional regulation and help shift brain state, move to regulate.
Makes sense. Tying back to the brain science we discussed, the sources also revisit balance and coordination training.
Yeah, Dr. Hallowell's success with Samuel in Shanghai underscored the power of these targeted exercises for strengthening the cerebellum.
And there was a study on preschoolers.
Yes, a study on high-risk preschoolers showed that specific balance training significantly improved their attention and self-control. It works.
Martial arts like taekwondo or karate are highlighted as excellent practices combining balance, coordination, focus, and discipline.
Definitely. A conference back in 1990 discussed how wilderness programs using martial arts with kids with severe behavior problems saw drops in disruption, improved grades, and better well-being. The strict protocols, the demand for precise body control, the need to regulate emotions, it all helps.
And current studies support this, showing real improvement when martial arts are added to treatment plans for children and adults with ADHD. Finding the right instructor is key, though.
Always key. Another powerful tool for training the brain, especially for managing the DMN, is meditation.
Right, for wrestling with that monkey mind, the part of the DMN that can get stuck in rumination and negative loops.
Exactly. A Yale study found that mindfulness meditation tangibly decreases activity in the DMN, helping to quiet it down when it's being disruptive.
And a 2011 Harvard study showed that just 8 weeks of mindfulness-based stress reduction actually increased cortical thickness in the hippocampus.
Yeah, a brain area vital for learning, memory, and emotional regulation, all areas impacted by VAST traits. It physically changes the brain.
How does it work? What's the mechanism?
Well, the mechanism involves focusing on breath, which strengthens the connections to the TPN by requiring deliberate, targeted attention. The goal isn't to stop thoughts, but to notice when the mind wanders and gently guide it back. Apps like Headspace or Calm can be great tools here.
The source also mentions the Ha breathing technique.
Yes. Inhale quietly through the nose for a count of 3 or 4, then exhale slowly for 6 to 8 counts with a soft Ha sound. This 1.2 ratio is said to interrupt rumination and increase alertness quickly. Simple, but effective.
Okay, so we have exercise, balance, meditation. But when it comes to incorporating these practices, motivation is often the biggest hurdle, right?
Huge hurdle. The sources talk about moving beyond simply setting out your workout clothes or relying on external rewards. Yeah. Dr. Michelle Segar's research at the University of Michigan found something really interesting.
What was that?
The most effective long-term motivator sticking with it for over a year wasn't wanting to lose weight or look good, but the feeling of stress reduction and well-being after exercising.
So the key is to focus on how the activity feels and the immediate benefits it provides, like improved mood, reduced anxiety, or clearer thinking, rather than just distant outcomes.
Exactly. Tune into the immediate payoff. The story of Lucy and math from the source illustrates this beautifully. Lucy struggled terribly with math homework due to frustration and ADHD.
So Dr. Rady suggested an immediate intervention. Before starting math, she should jump rope vigorously for 5 minutes.
Yep, and it worked wonders. The exercise reduced her anxiety and literally turned on her brain, making math more accessible. She continued this practice through college and nursing school, not for fitness, but as a powerful, conditioned motivator she knew would help her focus and reduce stress before tackling challenging mental tasks.
That's brilliant. Using exercise strategically.
Right. Incorporating activities outside in nature can also add motivation and enjoyment. And exercising with someone, a spouse, friend, or child, adds accountability, support, and valuable bonding time. Makes it less of a chore.
Okay. Now, the sources address what they call the most powerful tool in the short term, medication.
Yes, and it's important to preface this by reiterating the source's emphasis that over the long haul, building skills, creating the right environment, and fostering positive connections are the most important factors for success and well-being.
Right. Medication isn't a magic bullet on its own.
Absolutely not. But it is a valuable tool that, when properly prescribed and taken, can provide the most immediate and effective benefit, essentially strengthening those bicycle brakes significantly right away.
The sources note that many people with undiagnosed ADHD unknowingly self-medicate, often relying heavily on caffeine or trying unregulated over-the-counter supplements.
Yeah, trying to get that stimulation.
Yeah.
But those lack the controlled dosage and studied effects of prescription medications.
Crucially, the sources state that no one should ever feel pressured to take medication or give it to their child unless they truly want to. This taps into the powerful effect of the placebo.
Right. The placebo effect is the mind's ability to enhance an intervention's efficacy simply through belief and expectation. When you genuinely want something, a job, a car, medication to help you focus the impulses, you engage more fully with it, pay more attention, and your mind and body respond. Wanting medication can significantly boost its effectiveness for you.
That's a really interesting point. So when considering medication, the sources recommend asking 3 key questions for a personal risk-benefit assessment.
Yes. First, have you done your research and learned about the medications from reputable sources? Understand what you're considering.
Second, are you consistently implementing the key non-medical strategies?
Ah, yes, the foundations. Fostering connection, building structure into your day, prioritizing sufficient sleep, optimizing nutrition, and practicing relaxation techniques like meditation and ensuring regular exercise.
Yeah.
Those non-medical pillars are essential whether you use medication or not.
Absolutely. And the third question.
How significantly is the disorder negatively impacting your life or the life of your loved one right now? If the impact is high and non-medical strategies aren't sufficient, medication becomes a stronger consideration.
Okay, so how do stimulants, the most common type of ADHD medication, actually work according to the sources?
Well, they work by increasing the levels of dopamine and norepinephrine in specific areas of the brain, particularly the prefrontal cortex, which is involved in executive functions like attention, focus, and impulse control.
So these neurotransmitters are involved in motivation, reward, and regulation. And in the VAST brain, the system that handles them isn't working as efficiently as it could.
That's the idea. So by making more of these chemicals available, stimulants are essentially stimulating the brain's brakes, making it easier to apply control, focus, and regulate behavior.
Got it. The sources categorize stimulants into 2 main types.
Right. The methylphenidate type, like Ritalin, Concerta, Focalin, which are noted as being slightly more effective for children and teens, and the amphetamine type, like Adderall, Dexedrine, Vivance, Mighty Days, which show slightly better results for adults, though often by a small margin, by a hair, as the source puts it.
It's worth noting the sources mention that in clinical trials, most stimulants were less well-tolerated than placebo.
Which is expected, right? Placebos have no active ingredients, so no side effects by definition.
True. And there are also stimulant-like drugs.
Yes. These aren't traditional stimulants, but also work on dopamine and norepinephrine, just through different mechanisms. Examples include Wellbutrin, Strattera, and Norpinephrine, which were originally developed as antidepressants.
And these are often longer-acting and have virtually no abuse potential.
Correct. Which can make them a good option for individuals with substance abuse history or concerns, or those who experience side effects from stimulants.
What's the downside?
Well, the downside is they're generally not shown to be as clinically effective as stimulants for most people with VST. They take several weeks to build up to peak efficacy, and they can have their own set of side effects like insomnia, agitation, dry mouth, or digestive issues. Modafinil, originally for narcolepsy, is another stimulant-like drug that some find helpful for alertness and attention, though it's not FDA approved for ADHD, making insurance tricky.
Okay. A real game changer in medication has been the development of long-acting stimulants.
Absolutely. Huge difference. Medications used to only last about 4 hours, requiring multiple doses throughout the day, which was challenging for people who struggle with remembering things. Now, options can last 10, 12 hours, some even up to 16.
And this convenience led to significantly higher satisfaction rates.
Yeah, around 70% for long-acting compared to 40-50% for short-acting. Much easier to manage one dose.
Venevance, approved in 2008, is highlighted as particularly unique.
Yes, it's a prodrug, meaning it's inactive until metabolized in the body. It's activated by an enzyme in red blood cells, making it impossible to abuse by snorting or injecting. It's effective for about 10 hours and is completely soluble, so it can be mixed into a drink, which is great for kids or anyone who dislikes pills. There's a chewable option too now.
And MyDays, approved in 2017, is mentioned for its extended 16-hour effect via a 3-step activation process.
Right. The general recommendation from the sources is that when someone first considers medication, they might start with a short-acting stimulant under medical supervision to assess tolerance and response before potentially transitioning to a long-acting option for convenience and sustained effect.
Okay. And now for a critical counterintuitive point, almost a spoiler alert, regarding addiction and stimulants. This seems important.
This is huge. The sources state clearly that taking prescribed stimulant medication early in life, especially during the critical window when most addictions begin, ages 13-23, does not increase the risk of addiction later. In fact, it does the opposite.
Wait, really? So despite the stereotype, taking stimulant medication for ADHD actually prevents or significantly reduces the risk of developing substance use disorders later in life?
Yes, this is a key finding supported by research. Given that people with ADHD are already at a higher inherent risk for addiction, effective treatment with stimulants helps manage the underlying dysregulation and that hunger that might otherwise lead to self-medication or addictive behaviors. It's protective.
That's really important information to get out there. The sources also briefly mention the potential value of genetic testing services, like Tempus.
Yeah, they mention it as a consideration. These tests can sometimes provide insights into how an individual might metabolize certain medications, potentially helping guide prescribing decisions and reducing trial and error. The cost is also coming down, apparently often capped at around $100 out of pocket for many.
Good to know. Okay, wow. We've covered a lot of ground here. The science behind the VAS brain, the challenge with the brakes, the power of connection, movement, meditation, and medication. So how do we bring all these pieces together? How do you make sense of it all?
Right. That leads us to the final section in the sources, framed beautifully as putting it all together, finding your feel and making it real.
I like that.
The authors wryly note that you might have skipped ahead to this section, which is entirely understandable given the topic. They emphasize that there's no one-size-fits-all solution. All the strategies discussed are like pieces of a puzzle that you need to assemble in a way that works uniquely for you.
They use a wonderful analogy from Dr. Hallowell's brother-in-law, Chris, who is a golf pro. His core advice for golfing is twofold.
Yeah. You just need to find your feel and make it real. And the key to putting is not caring if the ball goes in the hole.
Okay, find your feel and make it real. What does that mean in this context?
It's about recognizing your own unique style, your strengths, your preferences. It's about personalizing the tools. What works for someone else, whether it's a specific exercise routine, a type of meditation, or an organizational system, might not work for you. You need to experiment and find your own rhythm, your special sauce, and then integrate it into your life consistently. Make it your real.
And the not caring if the ball goes in the hole part? That sounds counterintuitive for a sport where the goal is literally getting the ball in the hole.
It does. Dr. Hallowell admits his own initial disbelief. But Chris explains it doesn't mean being apathetic about the outcome. It means focusing intensely on the process in the moment, the swing, the putt, the feel of the club, rather than getting consumed by anxiety about the result. Focus on the doing.
Okay. And this applies so powerfully to life with VST traits. The goal isn't always perfect, consistent success, like hitting every shot perfectly or getting the ball in the hole every time.
Exactly. The key is staying engaged in the game itself, focusing on the effort, the attempt, the trying, not just the score.
The sources push back against the modern overemphasis on winning and success as the sole measures of worth, and the tendency to let setbacks or failures define you.
Yeah, because ultimately, the greatest reward and joy in life isn't just in the outcome, but in the process of trying, of navigating challenges, of experimenting with different ways. It's about being fully present in the effort, reveling in the good moments, suffering through the hard ones and sticking with it.
And the final piece of the golf analogy and the key thought from the sources is about embracing the imperfections.
Right. Cherishing the great shot, the moment of mastery, of course, but
Yeah.
also cherishing the flub.
Cherishing the mistake, why?
Yes, the mistake. The source suggests cherishing the flub just as much as the perfect shot,
Because
because it's the flub that makes you want to try again. It gives you something to work towards, something to improve. It keeps you humble, keeps you learning.
And fundamentally, it reminds you what it truly means to be human.
To make mistakes. Exactly.
So where do you go from here with all of this? What's the takeaway?
Well, we've taken deep dive into this source material, exploring the concept of the VSST brain as a Ferrari with bicycle brakes, not a deficit. We've seen how the science points to challenges with the glitchy switch between brain networks and the potential pitfalls of the DMN demon.
And we've looked at how strengthening that system through targeted exercises, impacting the cerebellum, harnessing the power of movement, and practicing meditation can beef up those brakes. Real, tangible things you can do.
We've understood the profound healing power of connection, the other vitamin C, and how positive relationships are a fundamental human need and a powerful antidote to past difficulties and present loneliness.
And we've discussed medication as a valuable, powerful tool when needed, not a crutch, but a way to make the system work more smoothly, allowing other strategies to be more effective, while also touching on the crucial non-medical foundations of sleep, nutrition, and structure.
So you have these insights, this knowledge, and these potential tools to start strengthening your own unique braking system, allowing you to better control and ultimately unleash the incredible potential of your Ferrari brain.
It's about understanding how you're wired and learning to work with it, not against it, finding your feel.
Exactly. And as the sources beautifully conclude, offering a thought for you to carry forward.
Work it forever, finding your feel and making it real. Cherish the great shot, for sure. Nothing beats it. But, oddly, cherish the flub just as much. It makes you want to try again and gives you something to shoot for. And flubbing reminds you what it is to be human, to make mistakes.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Thrive Spectrum. I truly hope you had a valuable and insightful time with me today. Our goal here is simple: to improve your life from many different angles, whether it's your mental clarity, your physical energy, your personal growth, or your career path. If you found this episode helpful, I'd love it if you shared it with someone who might need to hear it. And don't forget to join me next time we'll be diving into a powerful topic that has a big impact on your life. I promise, it's something you won't want to miss. Until then, take care of your mind, your body, and your future.